When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Raw with John Pollock and Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wade Take the Mic.
Welcome to Rewind to Raw. My name is Ting. And the much-deserved John Pollock vacation, if you can even call it that. We can't really call it that because the man is probably busier than ever. The John Pollock welcoming of a new member of the Pollock clan is still going on, and that means our lineup of guest hosts continues here at Post Wrestling. We've been joined in the past week by Bruce Lord, John Cena, Mike Murray, W.H. Park, and it continues, of course, on Mondays, 3-hour Raw. We had to bring in the big gun. This person is what I'd like to call Nas for podcasting. Anytime you need to speed up your podcast and attract just a great result, you hit the button and you bring on this man, Nate Milton, the Podfather himself. What's going on, Nate?
What's going on, brother Ting? I'm happy to be here, brother, and fill in for DJ Jopo. But I got to say, before we get into anything, I was so moved by the show last week, the big tribute for John and the way he just slow walked away from the microphone, and they played that MIDI version of the Rewind to Raw theme, and the fireworks and everything was going off, and I was just sitting in my house listening to the podcast, just thank you, Pollock. Thank you, Pollock. And so I'm coming here with a lot of emotion tonight, people. But yes, all jokes aside, I'm very happy.
We paid a lot for that Metallica.
I was gonna say, the Metallica, the music rights alone set the network back a fortune. But yes, I want to add to the long list of people sending my congratulations out to the Pollock family. And we all love John around here, so he's getting a much deserved rest, as you said, brother.
So of course you're the host of the Rocky Maivia Picture Show with the latest episode just released this past week. So yes, if you want to scroll back down into your feed, you can find Nate's review of San Andreas along with Shane and Chris from LA this past week. But the other time that listeners may have just recently heard from you, of course, would have been Rewind America, which was released a little over 2 weeks ago now at this point.
Yep. But you'd never know it by listening to the President of the United States, Way.
Well, I suppose at this point, it would be nice to get a bit of an update. I mean, we are three weeks removed? I'm getting my timelines mixed up, but
it's about 2.5 probably by the time folks are listening to this.
2.5, and how are things over in the state of Virginia in the several days or several weeks since?
Things are good, Way. I said it on a couple of different shows over the past few weeks. It feels just like there's been a little bit of a weight lifted off of my shoulders. I'm walking a little taller. I'm not breathing as heavy. And again, everything is not going to magically change on January 20th of 2021, but it does feel like, the temperature, at least around where I'm at, has started to cool down. There were some idiots the first week that were trying to intimidate people and threatening violence on people. And it's that's not the way to get your point across. And also it's a crime, but the authorities took care of that. And so the last 2 weeks, it's been kind of, people are just kind of trying to get back to where we used to be. And so, it's going to be an interesting, Way, because, it's one thing to lose, Way, Ting, but the way that the president's acting, you would think, Way, that it was a mysterious double count out, but actually only one candidate got counted out, and now they want to restart the match or the election. And I don't know if that's the way things go, Way.
We've seen heel tactics like this plenty of times. And sometimes, the scary thing is that sometimes there's a small chance that they might just work, depending on who the referee is, depending on perhaps how I don't know how if you have a heel commentator talking about it on the sidelines, maybe convincing the audience that this person is actually telling the truth when they're clearly not. So there's still, like today, of course, like it seemed like, what is it? Trump seemed to give as much of a concession as I think we might be getting at this point.
Yes, I think this is as much as we're going to get. Like, if anything, he'll give us a speech where he basically just hypes himself up for 30 minutes, and then maybe at the end he's like, but now I got to go. For no particular reason at all, I have to leave. And I think that's the most we'll get from that man, Way.
Have you kind of mentioned maybe like a little bit of strife maybe in the days ensuing, but certainly, like, I would say there was perhaps I don't know, I felt like a lot more fear of like major something very violent happening. Do you still get the sense that that's possible?
It could happen, Way. Like, anything could happen, particularly the closer we get to the election, because I do think these are inflection points where in the 3 or 4 days,
the closer we get to
exactly
the election, or do you mean the actual transfer,
the inauguration? I think that like, if you look in the days of the election, that's when it was the most tense, and as we've gotten further away from that, it's kind of dissipated. And I think it's going to be the exact opposite as we get closer to the inauguration, where things are going to ramp up. But hopefully, cooler heads prevail. But even if they don't, I'm not, a scientist, Way, but I can read, and the numbers I saw in the country, like, there's more people on the side of right, I guess you could say, than on the side that wish to do harm. So hopefully, don't start no stuff, won't be no stuff is I would just say to the folks out there.
Well, of course, we wish the best for everybody in the U.S. No matter like who you voted for. Ultimately, it's the betterment of the entire country, and of course the safety of all the people. So
yes.
Maybe we'll kind of leave the political talk at that. But I knew a lot of people were curious.
People just have to learn to lose gracefully, Way. And then let me tell you, Way, losing isn't easy. I'm an Atlanta sports fan.
Oh, of course.
But you have to deal with it. Like, I'm not still out here trying to litigate what happened in that Super Bowl against the Patriots. You just got to live with it. I'm not here trying to reignite what happened a few months ago with the Braves losing to the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series. You just have to accept it and learn from it and move on. And that's all I'm saying out there. Losing sucks, but you can learn from it and be better.
I agree with that. Before we move on, I wanted to get some of your thoughts on Survivor Series. Of course, listeners will have heard our show yesterday. Certainly a show not without its controversies in and of itself. A lot of feedback we had to our show yesterday with myself, Mike Murray, and WH Park. I have to say a lot of criticism, but a lot of positivity for it too. So do check it out if that interests you. But I also know that you, Nate, did a show of your own.
Yes.
So where can people listen to that, first of all? And if you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of a summary of what you thought.
Yes, well, I can do all of those things, Wei Ting. You can check out the show in one of two ways. There's the way that I would prefer you check it out, which is go to the Kings of Sport Patreon, where $5 gets you in the door, and you can check out the newest edition of Chain Reaction, which is a branded show between the Kings of Sport and Play Nation. But if you don't want to slide dollars my way, you can go to Place Be Nation and check it out for free. And we had a conversation with myself, Scott Criscola, and Brent Chittenden, somebody who the postmark should be familiar with. We talked about Survivor Series, so that's up right now. My thoughts on Survivor Series, Way, I'm not gonna bring the heat like that man WH Park, and I love brother Park. He's like the Beyonce of post wrestling. Like he did not come here to play with these bitches, Way. He came to slay, and that is what WH did last night. Like I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that you had with WH and Mike. And I want to know
what you're gonna get with WH. You know what? Like, I mean, it was a suggestion I had made to get him on the show. I thought it would be, interesting to get his takes, and it certainly was interesting. So, I do recommend you make up your own mind and listen to yourself. But yes, please.
Well, count me in the camp that enjoyed the show, Way. But my thoughts on Survivor Series. Was it a great show? No. Terrible show? No. I think it was. I think you said 6.5 out of 10. That's where I'd go. That 6.5 range, because matches that needed to deliver, I think, delivered. And I'm talking specifically Asuka versus Asuka, and the New Day versus the Street Profits, as well as the main event. Like I really enjoyed the main event. Like they managed to somehow make a match that they gave themselves a week to hype up. They made it almost like a WrestleMania caliber match. It's the atmosphere and the mood and the presentation of it. So I really enjoyed that. I like what Roman's been doing lately. That was cool. There was some weird finishes on the card, particularly in the Women's Survivor Series match, a theme that might carry over to our discussion about Raw tonight with these crazy finishes. So, I think the only match that really didn't hit for me, and I don't even know if it was going to, even if they had made it a 6-star classic, Ashley and Sammy. And again, it was short, so it didn't really drag down the show. So I thought it was a decent show, particularly in this COVID era. It's probably one of the most consistent shows we've seen. And it didn't, it did what it needed to do. Roman came out strong and Drew didn't lose anything in defeat. So I thought it was, for what it was good way.
So again, for more of Nate's thoughts, you could check out his post show on the Place to Be Nation, or as we recommend, on the Kings of Sport Patreon, which you can find a link to in the show description. Before we move on with this week's schedule, I wanted to alert everybody to a sale we've got going on this week at store.postwrestling.com. This is open to everybody, and it's 20% off any t-shirt of your choice at store.postwrestling.com. Typically, that works out to be about $5 off the regular price. So you can use that to do some holiday shopping, of course, and you can get the new Bushby and Thompson's Wrestling Adventure t-shirt, the Post Wrestling Marvel t-shirt, the Post Pro Res t-shirt, or, if you so wish, the Rocky Maivia picture show. A hit, a top seller, if I may say, at store.postwrestling.com.
Yes, I would definitely advise the postmarks to check it out. Again, 20% off way. Like, that's not just a deal. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a steal.
Oh, boy. Oh, we should get you to voice over some of these ads. So yes, store.postwrestling.com. That sale goes on throughout the weekend into Cyber Monday. So get yourself a shirt or buy a friend a shirt if they like the show. Coming up on the schedule this week, for those of you who have been missing John a whole lot, he will be making a return in pre-recorded form, but tomorrow on Rewind Away, we will be talking about ECW Anarchy Rules from 1999. This is a pay-per-view featuring, what was supposed to be Taz versus Masato Tanaka for the ECW Championship. Ended up being a three-way between Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome, and it resulted in the end of Taz's very long reign as ECW champion before going to the WWE. So we'll talk all about that show. We haven't done an ECW show in a while, so that'll be a lot of fun. We've got Bruce Lord joining me again on Rewind Dynamite on Wednesday. Our friends at Up Next are going to be back on Wednesday, of course. Bushby and Thompson's Wrestling Adventure is out on Thursday on the BWE feed. They will be talking about ROH's Manhattan Mayhem number 2, featuring Takeshi Morishima versus Bryan Danielson. Classic ROH match. With a few ROH experts. So we look forward to that on the British Wrestling Experience feed. Friday, Rewind to SmackDown will be live, and I will be joined again by John Cena. We had a ton of great calls on Friday last week, so all patrons, I encourage you to listen, and please join us again. I'll leave plenty of time for your calls. So that's what's going on this week on the Post Wrestling Cafe. And you know what? If you're a cafe patron, maybe even a bonus show this weekend as well. A lot of people have been asking for Total Bellas. If I have a bit of extra time, and if I can convince the fiance to join me again, perhaps we'll do one of those. Nate, are you a fan of the Total Bellas or any of the reality shows WWE releases?
See, here's the thing, Wayne. Like, I like them for what they are, but I have to binge them. Like, so I just wait until the season's over, and then I'll catch up. And they're like, okay, that's fun. That's cool. Like Total Divas is a little, I don't know why, but Total Divas feels like a little more extra than
a little more extra. What are you talking about? It's reality, Nate.
Like,
it's a
Total Divas is like, it like every episode feels like back in the day, and this is going to date me way, but I'm sure there's a segment of the audience that can rock with it. Like when MTV, when the Real World was really good, like late 90s, and like you'd always have that dramatic episode where somebody's getting kicked out of the loft or kicked out of the house or kicked out of the apartment, and it's like, what are we going to do? And then the last shot is always somebody leaving their keys on the dresser, and it's like that's how Total Divas is. Every episode, edge of your seat, fans.
Right. Okay. And I never watched The Real World, so I'll take your word for it. But I was a Big Brother guy. You know, like I never really got MTV here. Like we had Much Music, and they never really aired that show.
So if you never were into Real World, you probably never were into Road Rules either, because that was my show.
No,
like it's Real World, and we just stuff these kids instead of putting them in this fancy New York apartment. We're gonna stuff them in the RV for 3 weeks.
You know what could go wrong. So Nate, before we move on to our review of Raw, which, you know, I think to some people might have been a bit of a dozer of a show. We are joined tonight, of course, as we were on Wednesday and Friday, by our newsman, Andrew Thompson, the man who's manning the ship over at postwrestling.com in John's absence, just putting up story after story after story all day long. So, Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. Uncle Nate, always good.
What's up, nephew? I was gonna say, did you get your invite to the Thanksgiving cookout yet?
We're always good to be talking back with Uncle Nate, and of course, Way. You know, always good to be talking to you, my man. Even though we still got some beef from Survivor Series, but you know it's all good.
You know what? Like after a hard fought battle, I'd like to think that, you know, we know each other a little bit more. We're a bit more closer. Maybe we'll even tag team at some point.
Yeah.
It's a long-term story, but well, first of all, Andrew, maybe quickly, what are some of your thoughts on Survivor Series last night?
I think it was, you know, in ring wise, I think it was a solid show, top to bottom, just specifically on the in ring front. The ending with McIntyre and Roman, I think that was a kind of a clever way for them to, you know, kind of, you know, dodge the thing of having McIntyre having to lose clean, especially, you know, him winning the title so fairly recently. I did like the fact that they, you know, they gave Sasha the win over Asuka, considering Sasha just won the title. So, you know, I think they get a kind of a decent job protecting some of the, you know, the more hot champions right now. But yeah, on the overall in ring front, I think it was a decent show. But like, you know, I kind of wish they would, you know, do the whole champions versus champions thing for like a pay-per-view, like name, like Clash of Champions that they got. So I think that's kind of like more appropriate for these type of matches.
What is in the news today?
Man, it's well, you know, the first bit I think is very, very appropriate because we have our TNA specialist, Impact Wrestling specialist on the line, Mr. Nate Milton. It was confirmed today that the former TNA Knockout Tag Team Champion, TNA Knockouts Champion, Taylor Wilde is returning to Impact Wrestling. Is gearing up for her return. She was supposed to come back prior to the pandemic and have like a trial run with Impact Wrestling to see how she you know, how she was gonna fare in the ring, because she spent a great deal of time off. She went and pursued her degree in psychology, and she became a firefighter and a mom throughout that time period when she was retired. So Taylor Wilde is on her way back.
Nate, I know you're a fan of Taylor Wilde. Any thoughts on her returning?
Yeah, I think this is big news, Way. I think this is going to be something that could help the Impact Wrestling women's division, which, again, I think, Way, you can make an argument, and I'm not going to say it's the right argument or not. That's for the people to decide. But I think you can make the argument, Way and Andrew, that if you look at the Knockouts division versus like WWE and AEW's women's division, like pound for pound, I think Impact might have the best division going right now, just from top to bottom in terms of consistency. And so, like, just adding somebody with the experience of Taylor Wilde to that mix, I think it's a good thing, because she was great during her last run. And I think, you know, like, time off aside, like, I think she can only help the division.
It's impressive to know what she's been doing in the time since.
Yes, she's done more in retirement than most of us have done at work.
Oh, my God. But just even the knowledge that, at this point she seems to be coming back, not because she necessarily needs to, but, out of a love for the sport, I think is something that's very refreshing. So I'm curious to see what type of push she might be getting, whether or not she'll be, they'll be telling her story a bit more in depth about, especially now being a mother as well.
Yeah, and she's been kind of like endearing herself to the women's division on Impact. She has her Wilde on podcast that she hosts, and she's had she has a lot of Impact talent from the women's division, specifically on the podcast. So it's like she's already been getting to know them, and I'm pretty sure, in these off-air conversations, she's probably probably spilled the beans to them and let them know what was going on.
What else is in the news, Andrew?
So Mr. Kenny Omega was a guest on Wrestling Observer Radio this weekend, and this man revealed that he is working through a torn labrum right now, and that's basically said that it is something that could require surgery, but he's been basically fighting it off and avoiding having surgery, and just working with AEW's head trainer to keep him ready on a week-to-week basis. I think the quote that he said is more. I think a lot of people should hear it, and it's not a lengthy thing, but I think it's a very important. He, and I quote, he says, "So torn labrum, as you know, is no laughing matter. That is a surgery, but I've got a very talented and unbelievable trainer, and our doctors, of course, are always monitoring and making sure that we're doing okay. But our head trainer, Bryce Reddy, next level kind of guy, he's kept me together in a condition where I'm able to perform as long as I make sure that I'm able to see him 2-3 times a week. I can lift, I can do full range of motion. I just need to make sure I can look after it, and I can avoid that surgery. Of course, I can't afford having that time off. If things get worse, of course, that is an option I'll have to consider. But when I have problems with my neck, my shoulder, my back, my knees, and there are days when it is all of them, every single thing is hurting, I go to the trainers. They kind of patch me up, and I go out there and perform."
Man, stories, and of course that's from our friends at Wrestling Observer Radio. For that interview with Kenny Omega. I know wrestlers, wrestling with injuries is really nothing new, and you have to wonder, on the scale of injuries that Kenny Omega's probably had to deal with throughout his career, where does this rank? The fact that he can continue to wrestle with it, I think, suggests that it's not catastrophic enough, obviously, that he needs to take time off. But
right.
It also makes you wonder, though, if it is something that will prevent him from perhaps having a longer run, perhaps with the championship in the near future.
Yeah, because it kind of made me wonder about the same thing, kind of about the Young Bucks, because I know Matt Jackson's kind of dealing with an injury right now. So do you want to push them a little too far when it comes to these high profile matches that I'm sure they want to have and that they want to present, and versus where do you kind of draw the line with them as far as, okay, yeah, you're the champion, but let's kind of scale it back a little bit as far as you going out there and trying to just kill it every night,
And one thing that I think about when I hear stories like that way is I've always been an advocate for the idea that wrestling should have, if not an official off season, it should have off seasons within the roster where we cycle guys and girls in and out, and give them a couple months off to heal up. So if I'm AEW, I wonder if that's something they think about now. Because like you said, Andrew, they want to go out there and put on the best match they can and put out the best product they can. But when you look at the EVP specifically, you think all of us can't leave at the same time, but Kenny, Kenny take a couple months off, we hold it down. And then when Kenny gets back, all right, Bucks, y'all go do y'all thing, we'll hold it down. When they get back, Cody, go take you some time off and get ready for that match with Shaq. And so I think there's a way, and particularly, it's harder in WWE because the culture is so ingrained. But I think with AEW being a relatively young company, that might be something that they could think about going forward. Maybe working in breaks for not only the talent, but the folks running the ship.
I would love to see it. Absolutely. I guess the tricky thing about wrestling is that, no doubt, an off season would benefit, or cycling, like what you're suggesting, Nate, would definitely benefit people. But at the same time, it's man, what if somebody like Chelsea Green comes back in their first match back after a big month layoff and then just gets injured again, right? You never know when you're going to get hurt. So, I mean, certainly a break is better than no break. But at the same time, wrestling is just going to be dangerous no matter what, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like football or boxing or any contact sport. There's an inherent risk involved. And I agree, Wade. You can't stop accidents from happening or injuries from happening. But I do think like maybe if you think about things in a different way, you can maybe mitigate some of that stuff. You know, you can't stop everything, but maybe you can stop some of these things.
And continuing on the AEW front, as announced today, which it will it's midnight now as we recording this, but top flight has signed.
Kayfabe, brother, kayfabe.
But Top Flight has signed with All Elite Wrestling, Darius and Dante Martin. Nate, these young dudes, man, 21 and 19 years old, signed to All Elite Wrestling. Nate, let me ask you, do you think, and when you look those two, that you think AEW has done kind of a decent job with kind of diversifying their roster as far as like, you know, ethnicity and race, and on that mix of vet versus, you know, fresh faces, like we recently saw Jay Cargill and Anthony Bowens, Max Caster, and then they, you know, throwing a Matt Sydal that recently got signed.
Okay,
yeah, I really.
So, I'm sorry to cut you off. First of all, like, are we, Andrew? Are you actually talking about a pair of people that are actually younger than you for once?
I am indeed, sir.
That is amazing. That tells you how young these two actually are. Please continue, Nate. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh no, I'm glad you stopped me there, Wade, because yeah, that is breaking news. Like, pro wrestler actually younger than Andrew Thompson. More news at 11. But I think, like, I do like the mix of talent that's on the AEW roster. You know, the talent we see on Dynamite and the talent folks can catch on Dark, which I think is a really interesting show. Like, I don't watch it every week, but the weeks I do, it almost feels like they've manufactured a bit of a developmental territory way, where, like, these are folks we're going to get reps, and there'll be reps on TV, but they may not be connected to what's going on the main show. And so, yeah, like, I think, like, I'm waiting to see as a black wrestling fan, like I am waiting to see, like, who's going to be that breakout black single star in the company. But I think overall, like, that's just me, like, my wish list, like what I would like to see from the company going down the road. But I think if you just look at the makeup of the roster and not just ethnically or racially, but as you said, and experience levels and different styles from all over the world. And you know, we got some indie cats in here. We've got this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, but we've got this, I was going to say entanglement to be funny, but that's not what it is at all. But we got this kind of relationship with NWA where we've used some of their women, which has helped our women's roster. So yeah, I like what they've done so far.
I think they're a great signing. You know, like, just seeing how they fit in with the Bucks, they look tremendous. But, you know, my big question is, can they separate themselves from the Bucks? I'd say right now they're very much seemingly like kind of like a very young version of the Bucks, which I think, you know, bodes well for their futures, because they could be very much molded. But in the meantime, you know, like Nate said, you know, spending that time on Dark in development, separating them from perhaps some of the other teams that are out there, will probably be, it seems like a long-term play for AEW, you know, where this team probably won't necessarily get their big run. I mean, we're talking about, like, you know, Private Party. They've been around for a year, still haven't really had a big run. Neither have Luchasaurus or Jungle Boy. So all those teams are kind of in line first before a team like this might be, but certainly setting themselves up well for the future, I would say.
Like, it's crazy that you kind of mentioned Private Party, because, like, honestly, I felt like in AEW their peak was beating the Young Bucks in the World Tag Title tournament, and like they just never got to that point again. And like, it kind of makes me wonder, like just hindsight being 2020 kind of thing. Like, since Private Party kind of beat the most established team in AEW at that point, should they have gone on to be the first tag team champions of AEW, and then the Young Bucks probably get it back from them? Like, I always wondered about that.
See, I really do feel like they're another team that, like, they are waiting for them to be a bit more, like, you know, seasoned, not of course just in ring, but also as characters, you know, in terms of story, in terms of promo, before they really want to run with them as, like, main eventers. That's my hope, at least. There's certainly a time limit even with that, but I think they're still relatively young and underexposed, that I think you're still pretty far away from it. So I still have, like, high hopes for them.
Yeah, like, I like the little thing they did with Private Party and Matt Hardy. Like, I thought that was an interesting combination, and behind the scenes, it was probably good for them to sit under that knowledge tree. But yeah, like this, it's tough because that division is so stacked. Like who's the team you're going to move out to move Private Party up? And so like I do feel like their time will come, but they like that turkey right now, Andrew. Like the turkey that's sitting at your house right now, listeners. Like it might be good, but you ain't putting no seasoning on it yet. And I know, you want that good turkey taste, you got to put the seasoning on there, the salt, the pepper, maybe a little paprika if you want to get fancy with it, that little razzle-dazzle, Andrew. But right now, Private Party, they just like that turkey that's got potential. We just got to season them up a little bit.
Cooking sessions with Nate Way. I think that's the perfect way to put the ball in the news segment, man.
We had our Thanksgiving a month ago, so I mean, I'm jealous right now. Andrew, thank you very much. Any other stories?
No, that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. I mean, there was another one, but it was kind of like more of a cheap plug for me.
Give it to us. Give it to us, please.
Because Mike Bennett made his return to Ring of Honor, and the only reason I said that was kind of a cheap plug because we have an interview. We have an interview up on the Post Wrestling site with Matt Taven that I did several weeks ago. And Matt Taven, he basically told me that he and Mike Bennett had been talking about this happening for quite some time. So, and it was kind of cool to see it come to fruition. So that was kind of my cheap plug.
Never miss an opportunity to plug your own shit, especially on our podcast. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. You also have an interview, another one coming tomorrow with Mance Warner. Would you care to talk a little bit about that?
Mance talked about suffering a collapsed lung after a show last year, and he didn't realize it until his family made him go get checked out. So that was a hell of a story. He talked about Matt Tremon's time and working in GCW, AEW, and his linking up with that man Conrad Thompson in the podcast network. So I mean, the show network that they got on ad-free shows over there. So it was a good interview, man. Man's a good dude.
So that'll be out tomorrow. The written version will be up at postwrestling.com. But if you want to see the video version, go on YouTube and subscribe, as you should right now, to Andrew Thompson interviews. A big week for you, Andrew, because you'll also be back on Thursday this week with Bushby and Thompson's Wrestling Adventure. I kind of briefly... I either said it earlier or I'm about to say it, but I kind of teed it up already. But are you an ROH fan? Like, had you seen it before? What's your thoughts on Ring of Honor?
This was my first time seeing this show, and I immediately when I was thinking, like when I first saw it, like I just miss fans, man. Like genuinely miss a fan of these crazy crowds. But like when we kind of dove into it during the podcast, and I'm curious to kind of get you guys' thoughts about it real quick. Like seeing Daniel Bryan back then and just seeing how over he was and how technically sounding was, how great he was in the ring. And I was just thinking, I was like, damn, was there ever a time when Daniel Bryan wasn't like great? So I was thinking like what does Daniel Bryan rank just all time for you guys? Like seeing, him being one of the top talents, if not the top talent on the independent scene, making his way to WWE, making it to the top of the mountain, kind of forcing his way to the top of the mountain, and then somehow finding himself into a position of power when he's able to lobby for Big E and lobby for Kofi Kingston, lobby for Ali, and have some kind of pull power in WWE, and has openly spoken about that stuff. So like, I was kind of wondering, like, knowing all that and just seeing Daniel Bryan's rise, like, where does he kind of sit for you guys amongst the greats of all time?
For me, like, I what stands out about him, especially like after his WWE run, like it's not necessarily the wrestling. Like, he is always consistent. He's always solid, but like, I don't really think of him anymore in the echelon of, let's say, like a Kenny Omega or like, Kazuchika Okada or Kota Ibushi. Like, he is always solid, but he's not having like those kind of 5-star plus performances. But nonetheless, like, he is absolutely one of my favorite people, like one of my favorite human beings in the business. Like, knowing a lot more, I think, behind the scenes of especially what he's doing right now, trying to like, devote the latter portion of his career to helping other talent, seeing what type of person he is on Total Bellas. Like, it's really illuminating, I think, just how good of a human being this dude is. And for me, that's somewhat rare in professional wrestling, especially when you get people up at the very top. So that to me is what stands out about him the most.
Yeah, I would co-sign that way. Like I've always loved me some Daniel Bryan Danielson. Like that's my guy. And I think to your point, Andrew, like the way that he's kind of used the hard earned and hard fought for spot that he had in the WWE, like to use that to put Kofi over, like that. Like you don't get that from every top guy or every guy that's at near that top level. And so like I think when you look at his whole career, like it's hard to say where he ranks among the all-time greats. But I'll say this, and maybe this is the highest compliment I can give Daniel Bryan because this is one of my favorite basketball players ever. Daniel Bryan is the Rafer Alston of professional wrestling. And what I mean by that, for those that don't know about Rafer Alston, a.k.a. Skip to My Lou.
Oh, my goodness.
One of the greatest playground basketball players ever. And was one of the few that was able to take that skill from the playground and the And One mixtapes and all that and make it to the NBA. And have he wasn't a star in the NBA, but he had a solid career in the NBA. And that's how I look at Daniel Bryan, like one of the greatest indie wrestlers we've ever seen. Got to the WWE. At first, they didn't know what the hell to do with the guy, but he kept working and finally made his spot. And yeah, like you said, Way, like just you never hear bad words spoken about the dude. So yeah, Daniel Bryan to me is the Skip to My Lou of professional wrestling, Andrew Thompson.
I think that's a solid analogy right there. And they one last thing I did want to mention, like as like you guys, as long as being fans as long as you have, is it kind of crazy to you to know that there's a whole new generation out that will only know Daniel Bryan as his current incarnation, and you know him being the husband of Brie Bella and a reality TV star.
Absolutely, yeah, it's nuts. And technically the what is it? Step child-in-law of Johnny Ace. That's the weirdest part of the whole thing. Yeah, it's super weird, but that's why we love that show, isn't it?
Yep.
AD Thompson _ everybody for all the latest news. Doing a great job at postwrestling.com. Thank you very much for joining us, Andrew. We'll speak to you again on Wednesday.
Appreciate you, man.
I'm telling y'all, Andrew Thompson, follow this young brother. That's my nephew. Like he don't sleep, Ting. This man is up all hours of the night. This brother don't take a rest, take a nap. He don't sleep. The man, he like Hamilton way. The man is nonstop.
So we start off tonight's Raw with Team Raw gathered in the ring here with Adam Pearce, the victorious Team Raw from last night, of course. Adam Pearce wants to reward Team Raw for their clean sweep of SmackDown last night, and he asks each member to state their case for why they should be next in line for a shot at Drew McIntyre's title. Sheamus is first to go, and he says that he was the MVP of the team, and he wants to congratulate his best friend Drew McIntyre on being a two-time champion. AJ says he's the captain and therefore the MVP. Keith Lee says he pinned the SmackDown team captain, so he deserves it. Riddle says he pinned King Corbin, so does that make him King Bro? He wants to beat McIntyre so he can hold his dope sword to go with his dope crown. They call each other Dopey and Fireface. Riddle says Fireface wasn't his first choice because Firecrotch was already taken. So the continued I would say the continued transformation of Matt Riddle into like Ashton Kutcher circa 2001, in full effect, especially on this episode. Braun goes last, which makes him upset at Adam Pearce for making him go last. He physically threatens Pearce and then delivers a big headbutt to lay him out. And as we come back from commercial, they are teasing that Braun has been ejected from the arena and he will be facing later repercussions. What do you think of this opening segment?
I like it in the sense that the sweep last night actually had ramifications on this show, and it wasn't just something they just did. But yeah, like a little bit of Riddle goes a long, long way for me, Ting. And this was a little too much Riddle. I do like what we ended up getting out of this, though. So in that respect, it was a good segment.
It's certainly positive that they, see enough in him to give him so many lines, to give him a big presence on the show. Because the alternative is that he wouldn't be on the show at all. But again, it's it definitely. We went through this exact same thing with Rob Van Dam, 20 years ago, and it's that they really just feel a need to reduce him to just this very one note, whatever, dude, bro, like type of character that might be more palatable than, say, weed smoking former UFC fighter. But it just feels, I don't know, a little bit too cartoonish, I think, for the average modern fan is what I would say.
I think especially when we've seen how Impact portrayed the Rascals, which is, you could say that's a similar gimmick where, they're the potheads, but for whatever reason, maybe it's performance, maybe it's writing, like, even though those guys were caricatures, they felt more three-dimensional than Matt Riddle does up to this point.
Mm-hmm. So earlier today, we are shown a video clip of the Hurt Business telling the New Day how they embarrassed Raw and their loss to the Street Profits last night. They want a match for the tag team titles tonight. Cedric says, while you guys were cosplaying last night, I was on the sidelines. And tonight, I'm not asking, but I'm telling the New Day that I want a title opportunity. So the spotlight can be put where it should be, on me. Woods agrees. What did you think about Cedric Alexander having like a big sort of little moment here for himself?
Again, the WWE giveth away and they taketh away. Because on the one hand, I like that Cedric Alexander had more to do here. I just felt like this segment, and there'll be parts of the match that we talk about, like it just didn't click. And like I like everybody involved in this segment, but for whatever reason, it felt too contrived. I guess would be the word I'd use, Way. Like we know that things have to happen on this scripted show, but it felt like they could have come up with a better rationale for this match.
The rationale was you embarrassed my show, and I mean there are no such things as, I think, really rankings. It's just like you encounter somebody in the back, you ask for a title shot, and things are just kind of granted. But I did note that it was like interesting that they decided to give Cedric, this amount of spotlight, and that would continue into the match itself. I thought Cedric sounded pretty nice and confident here. Like, for the first time since he entered the Hurt Business, at least I got a sense that they were actually focused on making him the next star. Like, they're looking at him perhaps as the Randy Orton to, their evolution, as sort of like the next guy in line for a main push. Whereas before, the whole time I just kind of saw him as like, your 205 Live, like jobber there to take falls. And that could still very much be the case. But tonight, like this little bit of like, scripted dialogue from him got me to feel like he might be somebody important to pay attention to. So we go to the match. It's a tag team title match between the New Day and Shelton and Cedric. Quite standard going into the commercial, but we come back here. Kofi is about to dive onto Shelton, and while the referee is distracted, the illegal man, Cedric Alexander, rips Kofi off of the turnbuckle from the outside, sending Kofi tumbling to the floor. Kofi starts to sell the injury from the fall as the ref counts he and Shelton both out. Shelton is about to drag Kofi back to the ring. 7, 8, 9, 10. Shelton makes it back through the ropes, but Kofi doesn't. So the match is counted out. Ringside, everybody looks perplexed. The Hurt Business have technically won, but their music doesn't play. The New Day at this point retreat to the ramp. They're calling for their belts. Even Woods is saying, you want a title match and you can't even follow the rules. MVP grabs the mic. He says he needs the ref to restart this match. You don't want to lose like that, do you? Are you guys scared? So the New Day agree again to restart the match. And then another commercial. I feel like me recapping it made it sound maybe a bit more fluid than it was, but in the execution, it felt incredibly awkward. What was going on here, Nate?
This was bad, Way. And again, it's not to denigrate the performers, because everybody involved in this match is a good performer. But one of the things that I hate about any medium, movies, TV, wrestling, is when you got characters acting dumb for no reason. And we'll see this again with the Hurt Business tonight. And I think I was more pissed off about the second instance than this one, but this still wasn't good. And it also, like, it immediately makes the viewer think back to Survivor Series if they watch Survivor Series. And we talked about how that match, the ending was kind of wonky, and like, I don't know if that's the vibe you want going into tonight. So yeah, it made the Hurt Business look dumb. It made the New Day look dumb for accepting the restart of the match. And it didn't do the performers any favors.
So, I mean, by the way this whole thing played out, I mean, I would bet that it was, everything according to plan. But God, like in execution, it felt like, I don't know if somebody was late getting into the ring and they just, respected the rules so much that they had to count Kofi out, which would be crazy to me. But either way, I think it's silly, okay? If it was a screw up on Kofi's part. Like, yeah, I admire the respect for maintaining a referee's credibility, but when it's a half second away, bend the rules a bit, please. But now, if this was intentional, I think that's even worse. Why would you script a segment like this just to facilitate a commercial break in here?
Right.
So that, I mean, Jesus, it just, like you said, it made the Hurt Business look like idiots. They're the ones who caused Kofi to get injured, and then they got themselves counted out.
Yep.
It made New Day look like heels for accepting a count out retention of the tag team belts. And overall, just like, I don't know, it just felt like they were overthinking it too much, if in fact this was all according to plan.
And the worst thing about it, Way, is just like you said, like if they wanted 2 segments, Shelton, Cedric, Kofi, and Xavier can give you 2 damn good segments. And they didn't allow them to do that because we had to get this convoluted extension of the match tacked on.
Yeah, super weird. But I suppose we'll find out maybe some of the reality behind this maybe in the next day or so. So we get a rematch right after the break. It's the Hurt Business versus the New Day 2. Kofi at this point again is thrown over the top rope. This time he favors his knee, and the Hurt Business begin working over it. Some good stuff I thought between Shelton and Cedric as they start tagging in and out, working over that leg. The announcers continue to put attention on Cedric being a new relentless version of himself. And after being beaten down for so long, Kofi breaks the heels' momentum by simply kicking Cedric away. Big hot tag to Woods, and then Kofi does his kind of weird, sloppy, silly, like floppy dive onto Cedric onto the floor. Woods hits a powerbomb counter into a code red onto Shelton for the win. What did you think of the second portion of this match, Nate?
I like the second portion of the match. I think we had actually, a cohesive story being told with the Hurt Business working over that knee of Kofi, and Kofi was able to get Woods back in there, and like I don't know, Way, if it's just the fact that we didn't see Woods for so long because he was hurt, but I feel like Woods has come back with so much more fire than the last time we saw him, because like last night and then tonight, like when he gets the hot tag, like I've loved some of the stuff that he's done, and so yeah, but at the end of the day, like even though I enjoyed the match, it does kind of make the Hurt Business look dumb because, yes, like you caused the first match to get thrown out, and now you lost the second match. So why the hell should you get a third match?
Technically, this is their third match because last week they lost a match too. So, I mean, the story now is that the Hurt Business have had 3 opportunities to win these belts, and they've lost them all. They're totally incompetent. I just have no idea what to really say about this sort of booking. I mean, the idea that if you're going to say the Hurt Business is incompetent and they can't get it done in 3 opportunities, that in itself I think is problematic for like, your top heel stable in the company. Yeah. But I wouldn't have done like the weird whatever like count out thing that they were doing. I mean, anyway.
You know what? I think, unfortunately, Way, it just popped into my head. I think I know what this is setting up. Like on the show, the Hurt Business, like, yes, they're the top heels, but they're also like a small business. They're a small corporation. And right now they're having trouble running their business. It's being run inefficiently. Things aren't getting done. And so who better to help a small business, Way, than the former administrator of the Small Business Association? Linda McMahon is going to come in and help the Hurt Business become a more effective company.
Oh boy, I would love to see that. Those skits.
Linda as the mouthpiece for the Hurt Business is something that would be incredible and terrible at the same time, Way.
They definitely need an injection of charisma, and nobody can get it done. Like Miss Zombie herself, Linda McMahon. Oh man. Yeah, that would be quite the visual. That would be quite the way to wrap up the storyline, that's for sure. And you have the Bobby Lashley, Donald Trump connection too, don't you?
Ooh, yes. Oh, it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
Adam Pearce is just leaving the trainer's room where he's been checked out. He's got a big red welt on his head, if you didn't know that he was just attacked. He says if it's not up to him, but if it was his call, he'd fire Braun Strowman and you wouldn't see him again. He's about to make an announcement about what he was about to say earlier in the night, but Bobby Lashley interrupts to speak to him. After a commercial break, Adam Pearce is about to continue But Randy Orton at this point interrupts to talk to him, so we don't hear from him for a little bit. Sarah is in the back with Lana. Lana says last night was the greatest moment of her career. Sarah asks, what's next? Perhaps a rematch against Asuka? Lana says, I can't think about that right now. Feels like I'm dreaming, and I don't want to be waking up. Get your thoughts on Lana later, Nate.
I have thoughts about Lana waiting.
So we hear from Adam Pearce again, and he's just spoken to Randy Orton. His decision is that we're going to have 3 singles matches tonight. The winners will meet next week in a triple threat, where the winner of that match will go on to face Drew McIntyre for the championship. Tonight, for the qualifiers, we've got Matt Riddle versus Sheamus, AJ Styles versus Randy Orton, and Keith Lee versus Bobby Lashley. And that first match with Riddle and Sheamus starts right now. These two, of course, had a big match a few weeks back that apparently Vince McMahon completely loved, which might have actually been the impetus for this Matt Riddle name change to Riddle. So this week, Nate, like it was as last time, a very hard-hitting affair. We go through several, at least one commercial break segment. We come back. It's a very aggressive back and forth. Riddle hits this like springboard floating bro. Sheamus goes for like the 10 beats of the Bowery, but Riddle counters that with a Kimura through the ropes. Sheamus actually has this great looking entry into a heel hook. Riddle gets out. Sheamus sucks a PK, eats a final flash knee, which looked great even in slow-mo. I noted, Nate, here, the audio guy really like got his like hand on that crowd noise dial, turning it all the way up to 12 for this match. It was that big of a match. Riddle goes up again for the floating bro. Sheamus meets him up top, executing an avalanche white noise. Riddle kicks out at 2. Sheamus is about to bro kick, but Riddle just collapses before he can make contact. As Sheamus talks trash, Riddle wakes back up with a big kick. Riddle rolls into a victory roll. Sheamus rolls through that into a cloverleaf once again, but Riddle rolls through one more time into a pinning combination, giving him the win and qualifying him for next week's 3-way. What'd you think of the match?
I really like this match, where I was pleasantly surprised. Because, again, like I'm not the biggest Matt Riddle fan. Like I may or may not have derisively said that he's like Kevin Von Erich with a cannabis card to describe his wrestling style.
There's a t-shirt. There's a character I would have loved to see. It's
Kevin Von Erich with a cannabis card and Matt Riddle. But I thought this was a really good match. Like it played to both men's strengths, and this might have been the best Sheamus match because I forgot the other Riddle match. Like I probably wasn't paying close attention to it just because, I didn't know that I had to, I didn't have to speak to the people about the match later. But I was paying attention.
You didn't know what name was on the line.
I didn't know that it was for the name. But tonight I paid close attention, and I'm like, these guys clicked. I can see why, like Vince McMahon and I don't usually agree on things but I can see why he was high on this combination.
I totally agree with you. In fact, I thought this was like one of the best Sheamus matches I feel like I've seen. And, I always feel like he's been somewhat underrated because like he's kind of got that WWE big man stigma. But I thought a match like this really put a spotlight on like some of his, more versatile talents. Like he, of course, loves to hit hard, which matches really well with Matt Riddle's style. But in Riddle, like he was the combination allowed Sheamus to drag out some more technical ability here, like some nice looking heel hooks here. It was like kind of a nice way to round out that hard hitting style that Sheamus already has. And for Riddle, I thought this was one of his best main roster matches too. Yeah. In particular, like I feel like through his time on the main roster, going into it, like I too have been pretty vocal about maybe like my, I don't know, not like me not being completely on board on the Matt Riddle train. I feel like a lot of people, kind of maybe overrate him. But I feel actually him being on the main roster has kind of made him into a more well-rounded wrestler himself. And in particular in this match, I thought his selling was better. He's not just a guy who's going from flashy move to flashy move. I thought the bits in between the moves for him in this match is something that I think he showed improvement in. It's something that I think the main roster WWE style actually teaches well, maybe teaches a little too well, and makes his wrestlers rely on it a little too much, as we will go on to talk about perhaps in another match later. But at least in this one, it definitely helped Riddle feel more well-rounded to me. So I thought it was a very good match. I would have loved to see a camera on Vince McMahon as he was watching this. I'm sure he would have loved it.
Yes, and to your point on Sheamus, like I was not super enthused about the prospect of Sheamus versus Drew. But if we get a Sheamus that looks like the Sheamus we saw on Raw tonight, like, I think that could actually be a pretty good match.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, Sheamus, too, has like a very hard-hitting style. I think when you add the element of like a well-told story to it, I'm actually more excited for that match than I've probably been for any Sheamus match whenever it happens. So we shall see. Lana and Asuka are backstage, and Asuka asked Lana if she challenged her earlier. Lana says, not really, I was just asked a question. Asuka is super enthusiastic, and she simply accepts the match. See you in the ring tonight. As Lana gives just, in case you had any doubts how she felt about this thing, they spent a long time lingering on her smiling, like big smile about it all.
I mean, Lana is like, she is a trained theatrical actress, and when you're trained in the theater, waiting, I don't know if you've ever been in the theater, but you're taught to play to the back of the room so that somebody way up in the cheap seats can see your emotion, and that's what Lana was giving us tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Subtle. It was subtle. Yeah. Firefly Funhouse segment is up next. Today's lesson is all about something truly evil: friendship. Bray says friends will always let you down. 1 minute, they're your best buds, playing ball, burning the midnight oil. And the next, they're burning something else. As we cut to shots of Randy Orton burning Bray's house down from a few years back. But Bray, this time, is actually alluding to Alexa's friend Nikki Cross as a frog appears. A friendship frog who believes that true friendship should last forever. Bray tells Alexa to show us what she's going to do to Nikki by attacking the friendship frog. So Alexa's eyes start glowing. She takes that stake that Bray has and destroys the frog with it. Green blood and everything. We see an obituary video for the friendship frog in a fog from a tadpole to now. He died at age 40. Is that how long frogs live for?
I don't buy that. Out of everything in this segment, that's the thing. That's where I draw the line, Way. I can't believe that.
1980 to 2020. I mean, that's a pretty long lifespan.
It's a good run for a frog.
So anyway, the punchline at the end is, he was a fine amphibian. It's a shame he croaked. Listen, I can't wait for John Pollock to come back because I hate recapping these. There's so much going on.
Yes.
I hate writing notes and then recapping them because I can't omit any of it because like it would make it even more confusing. But it's just like, can you help me make sense of all this, Nate?
Here's the thing. Like, I'm kind of hot and cold with the Bray stuff. Like, sometimes I really dig it. Other times I feel like it's just eccentric for the sake of being eccentric. But tonight, and I don't know, like lately, maybe it's because of the inclusion of Alexa. It feels like the segments have a little bit more life to them. But yeah, like I like that we're still keeping Randy Orton on the back burner, no pun intended. And I guess it did what it was supposed to do to set up the match tonight. But yeah, like there's a lot going on here. Like I maybe I need to hang out with Matt Riddle more, and then I can understand these segments more clearly.
Yes, the Kerry Von Erich with the cannabis card. It's I know that they're like these segments. I think they're very visually stimulating, which is I think the intent. I mean, if you remember, we used to have Bray Wyatt simply talking to us, and in Riddle, not the wrestler, but just in promo, and that didn't really work. So these are definitely an improvement on that. But I would say that by the end of it, I don't know if like the intent is to make you laugh or to make you scared or just to make you watch. In that sense, I suppose they work, but I can't really say I feel much emotion coming out of these at all. But they do like work in the way that they, I suppose, tell you what program he's got coming up next. You had the allusions to Randy Orton here, as you mentioned, and then of course teeing up the Nikki match later on tonight. But first, we've got our women's title match between Lana and Asuka. Nia and Shayna quickly show up, and the idea is to show in the match that Lana was being competitive and actually deserving, despite her, constantly kind of, being portrayed as a bit of a loser. So quickly, like I'm talking less than a minute in here, Shayna and Nia are taunting Asuka on the floor. Asuka gets out and spills water onto them. Nia and Shayna then attack Asuka, causing a DQ. Again, probably like less than a minute into this. As Nia is about to put Asuka through the announce desk, Lana saves her, leaving with Asuka up the ramp as Nia and Shayna challenge them. So before we get that match, we get an R-Truth WWE shop ad for Black Friday where Drew Gulak shows up with the ref. He hits him with the Money in the Bank briefcase. He's about to pin him, but the lights go out. And the Fiend shows up. The Fiend is going after the 24/7 championship. But it's actually just Tozawa in a Fiend mask. Psych. And these men earn a wage for the day.
Actually, these 24/7 segments are usually trash, but I kind of dug this because it accomplished a couple goals. You had your Black Friday sale with Truth out there pimping the WWE shop. Then you had your Gulak interaction. Then when you had like the Fiend lights and music start going, the moment where Truth is like, oh, he's coming, I gotta go. Like
he just like no-sold the idea that like so what is this? Is this like exposing the fact that the 24/7 division is all fake?
It is.
People are just,
yes,
like playing people that suck really bad at wrestling.
I mean, far be it from me, Wade, to disparage the lineage of the 24/7 championship, which has had such esteemed men as the Gobbledygooker and Gronkowski hold it. But yeah, this is like this is Akira Tozawa, by the way. Like I don't think we can remind people enough about this way. This is Akira Tozawa who was eaten by a damn shark at one point in his quest for this championship.
I think they've definitely drawn a line between reality in like, let's say your main event and like the cartoonish world of the 24/7 division. Like it's anything that happens in the 24/7 division is like, it doesn't really exist in canon, or at least it's not supposed to be treated as, I don't know, as scientific with physics or even like real life, consequences as you might say in a main event. Like maybe it's all a dream sequence.
Oh, that'd be excellent if one day we just get a 24/7 segment and it's just Truth coming out of the shower, a la Bobby Ewing. It was all a dream. My bad, everybody. I will say, Wade,
JR Truth.
Yes, JR Truth. Oh, beautiful. I while these segments are trash, like I will say, if there's anybody that can pull some nugget of enjoyment out of them, it's Truth. Like for whatever reason, his stupid comedy works for me more often than not.
I think my one regret is that we didn't invite WH Park on for this show as well, because I think his pessimism mixed with your optimism would have been a tremendous mix.
Been that sweet spot right there, just perfect.
Asuka and Lana taking on Shayna and Nia. Nia and Shayna quickly gain control of Lana, while Nia repeatedly shoves Lana to the ground, yelling, "You're pathetic. I can't believe you're the sole survivor." Shayna stomps on Lana's neck and then pulls her leg straight up over the back of her head in this very elevated half Boston Crab, which looked pretty devastating. Hot tag to Asuka as Nia and Lana start fighting on the floor. Nia is about to send Lana through the announce desk once again, but Lana fights away. Nia charges, but Lana dodges, sending Nia into the table. Shayna grabs Lana in a clutch through the ropes, but Asuka rolls her up for the victory, so Lana again is being positioned as the one who kind of snuck her way into giving Asuka the major assist here in a victory. Again, without doing anything. What did you think about the match and the storyline as a whole?
Oh, here comes the pessimism way. You wanted it, you're going to get it, because I hate this character. Like, I think this could work if you had somebody that could garner sympathy. And despite the fact that Nia and Shayna are being these relentless bullies, I have no sympathy for Lana. Like, she's not Mikey Whipwreck. You know what I mean? She's not Kylie Ray or some figure that you're like, oh, that person needs to be protected. Like, they're too innocent for this rough and tumble world, but they won't give up because they got spirit and moxie and grit. Lana's not that character, and I think the ending of the Survivor Series match left a bad taste in my mouth. The fact that this is the same Lana who, my math might be off way, but like 3 weeks ago, she was walking around with Natty, like making things miserable for people. And months before that, she was in this marriage, quote unquote, with Bobby Lashley. Like, this is not the sympathetic character. This is not the sympathetic babyface. And so, yeah, like, it's almost to the point where I'm rooting for Nia and Shayna, Way, because I, as a viewer, am annoyed with Lana's ineptitude.
Completely agreed. I mean, they've really had issues, I think, in the past with like transitioning some of their characters from babyface to heel without any sort of explanation at all. And most recently, I feel like you saw that with Lacey Evans, where one week she was a heel, another week she's a babyface, and then all of a sudden, like she's the babyface with the daughter that we're supposed to feel sorry for, single mother, former army veteran, and then like all of a sudden she's a heel again. We're supposed to have forgotten about all that stuff. And it was the same way here with Lana, where you go from, you know, a social media manager for Natalya who stuck her way in to winning a battle royal to all of a sudden trying to be this very sympathetic character that we're supposed to cheer simply because she gets put through tables by Nia every week. So they've like really just like stuck with this story and have seen it through for an entire month now, to the point where without, you know, they're at this point, and maybe for some people they'll actually feel sorry for Lana and they might even get behind her. But I think without that solid foundation, anybody who has any sort of memory past 1 month or 2 months is not going to be on board with this story. There aren't honestly too many redeeming values about her that make her a natural babyface to begin with. It's not like the type of character, like, I mean, I hate to make the comparison, but I mean, it's not like a Daniel Bryan or a Kofi Kingston where like you're kind of pulling for this person to want to succeed anyway. Like, Lana is just a very natural heel. And the qualities she does have that make her great, I mean, I think are more well suited for her being a heel manager, less so for being a sympathetic babyface wrestler. And so,
yeah, and the other thing, like, yes, she's improving in the ring, but it'd be one thing if she were like Kairi Sane, right? Who's this smaller performer, but can do amazing things in the ring. Like, that's not Lana. Like, her wrestling doesn't make her a babyface to me either.
I'll tell you what, like, I haven't seen this whole show, but like I saw a clip from the Chronicle where like it was very emotional, where she was talking about like dealing with cyberbullying, and just like suffering from depression as a result of it. You see a clip like that, and that absolutely does make you feel sympathy for her. And if you even like see that clip before seeing the rest of the storyline, you kind of understand maybe why they would like decide to push Lana in this way. But you're not featuring that type of interview anywhere. No. You're not making it certainly a part of the storyline. So without that, like, very kind of important element, or at least some type of storytelling reflecting that sort of emotion, the rest of this is certainly not landing at all. We meet up with Riddle, with MVP backstage. Riddle wants to wish Bobby good luck tonight, and Riddle says he's got some business ideas for MVP's investments. He says, people love pizza and yogurt, so how about pizza-flavored yogurt? Brogurt. MVP says, I'm not your bro, and if Riddle wants to pitch some ideas to him in a couple weeks, that's fine. If they like the idea, they'll do business. But if they don't like his ideas, they'll do some business.
Like this, I actually like this interaction. Like, I think MVP is somebody that can work with anybody, and I might be reading too much into it, but I felt like there was a point during that whole brokerage spiel where he almost got MVP to laugh, just because of the ridiculousness of it, and so yeah, like, I think if we'll see later on tonight where the rest of the tournament goes, but I think setting up, you know, a Lashley Riddle program, that could be cool in the future.
I like that a lot. I think it's a good, like, in terms of level where they're being pushed. I think it's a good pairing. I think it's probably in ring, like, it could drag something very good out of both men. Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about how maybe like cartoonish this Riddle character is. I will say, like, Riddle does a very good job of portraying it and delivering exactly, I think, what they're looking for. It's not awkward for him. Like, he is this character, and if the intent is to portray him as sort of like, you know, like 90s surfer dude, like, he's nailing it. or Kerry Von Erich with the cannabis card.
Kevin, because they got the bare feet connection.
Oh, Kevin, yes, Kevin Von Erich. Keith Lee versus Bobby Lashley. It's a battle of two very well protected men. This, of course, is another qualifier for the triple threat next week. Lashley hits a flatliner, but Lee kicks out at one. Lee is trying to prevent the Hurt Lock from being applied. He's about to dive onto Lashley, but MVP distracts him, which allows Lashley to attack. Both men execute very impressive leapfrogs. Lee delivers a big cross body to the floor, but MVP shoves Lee into the post behind the ref's back. Back in the ring, Lashley again struggles to apply the Hurt Lock, but Lee fights out of it, dropping Lashley right onto his back, squashing him. And at this point, MVP simply runs in and attacks Keith Lee, causing Lashley to be DQ'd. I thought there were some really, really impressive sparks of like athleticism in this match from like these two super athletes. And I almost wish this was a match that took place in a shorter amount of time, because I feel like these two going at a much faster pace could have been really impressive. For me, I thought the pace was at times a little too slow and inactive for me. And this, to me, is where maybe WWE style gets to be a problem rather than, a positive. But I thought overall they did a good job conveying both guys as like big, evenly matched monsters.
Yeah, I really like the combination between these two. And like they had some decent chemistry. I think, if they had the chance to run this match back, it could be even better. The one thing that really pissed me off, again, making your characters look dumb, was the finish. And the announcers tried to cover it by saying, MVP, he saw Lashley was taking too much punishment and he wanted to end the match. Maybe they had a flashback to Rocky IV, and that's what Rocky should have done. He should have ran in and hit Drago before he killed Apollo. But it's like, okay, if you want me to buy that theory, Lashley's right there. Why didn't MVP just kick Lashley one time? Then the same result happens. The match gets thrown out. But this time, Lashley wins instead of loses.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Why? Well, I guess he doesn't want to hurt his own guy. Like maybe they're that like careful about it. But yeah, it's kind of true. Because
it makes MVP look silly. Like he's supposed to be the mastermind, but he got his guy DQ'd.
Yes, absolutely. Like he should.
He got all of his guys DQ'd tonight, basically.
Did that happen in the first match too?
In the Kofi match, the New Day match, yeah.
The count out. Yeah, it was not a great night for the Hurt Business, unfortunately. So, they might have to have that meeting with Matt Riddle to keep afloat. Or Linda, perhaps.
Linda's going to come in and tighten this ship up. She's not going to play for this tomfoolery.
No. Nikki Cross is in the back. She's been trying to get Alexa to come back, but she's done trying. And Nikki is sick of worrying about Alexa and her friendship. She's going to beat the Fiend out of Alexa Bliss tonight. And Nikki Cross comes out. I don't know if I've noticed her theme music before. I don't even know if this was actually her theme music or just the music they used to go to commercial, but she's walking out here, Titantron and everything. She comes out to this song, which I can only describe as something that would fit perfectly on WCW Slam Jam Volume 1. Like, I don't know if you noticed, Nate, but it was like, felt like it was straight out of the 80s, man. Like, it was very different from the type of music that they've been using lately, but people hear it.
I mean, there is, to be fair, like one of the masterminds, one of the brilliant minds behind Slam Jam does still work in the WWE. So
that's what we need. Forget
maybe
CFOs.
That's a Michael P.S. Hayes original.
Forget CFOs. Like put Hayes in NXT to in charge of the music.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
We got Alexa Bliss versus Nikki Cross. This, I think, was somewhat portrayed as a bit of a culmination again, I suppose. I feel like these two have already had the match, but they're doing it again. This time, Nikki wanting to beat the Fiend out of Alexa. Nikki asks throughout the match, "What's wrong with you?" Alexa makes Nikki chase her around the ring. Finally, Nikki grabs her, takes control. She's beating Alexa up pretty aggressively, but Alexa just kind of smiles about it, and Nikki continues slamming Alexa's head into the mat, screaming, "Listen, listen." And then Alexa, in the middle of this match at this point, starts crying. She's pleading Nikki not to attack her. She's looking at her hands confused, screaming, What's going on? What's going on? Alexa says, Nikki, help. I'm so sorry. She hugs Nikki and then delivers a Sister Abigail for the win. What did you think of the match?
Oh, wait. Until you gave that brilliant description, it didn't occur to me that this match is ripped straight from the story mode of WWE 2K19. Because there's a part where your character, and spoiler alert for this video game that's 2 years old by this point, but your character is in a feud with Bray Wyatt, and Bray Wyatt hypnotizes your friend and forces your friend. No, this is in the game, Way. It forces your friend to fight you, and the only way you can save your friend is by beating him in a match. Oh, this is straight out of the damn game, Way.
Interesting. Okay. Man, that's really bold to try to replicate something like that on TV. Well, how do you think the execution was?
Well, see, here's where I think they have an opportunity in real life to do what they couldn't do with my guy Cole Quinn in the video game. I think you've got an opportunity, Way, to tell some really interesting stories here. But I think also I'm thinking a lot because this is a match that is very thought-provoking, a feud that's thought-provoking. We've seen too much physical contact already, I believe.
Between Nikki and Alexa.
Yeah, I think this is something that you could maybe even drag out and make a little more psychological and really kind of play on Nikki, because I think the thing that this feud has kind of robbed Nikki of is a defined character. Like, we know she cares about her friend, but like, is she still like crazy Nikki from months and years gone by? Or like, where's Nikki's head at right now?
I can definitely make the argument that she's never had a defined character. Even as she was the best friend of like Alexa Bliss, that was all she was. She was the best friend of Alexa Bliss, and we knew nothing else about her. From her time in Sanity onwards, it's like she's always been a very superficial character. And I say that because they've had opportunities to tell a deeper story with Nikki Cross. They kind of hinted at it with like, at one time she was going for a championship, talking about, I have all this family back home watching me. They never explored any of that beyond like one little mention in a promo. And then up until this point, like even Alexa Bliss, like the deep friendship that she happens to have with Alexa Bliss, we don't really know what it's about. I think there's so much here. Like,
and for the longest time, we didn't even know if it was being reciprocated by Alexa.
That too, like it started off as something that definitely looked like it was like teasing some sort of heel turn. Anyway, like throughout that entire time, you know, you've had Alexa Bliss turn heel, and even the reasons for Alexa Bliss turning heel, I think, are still really unclear. Not to say like they have to completely spell it out, but at least get me emotionally invested. The reason why Alexa Bliss turned heel, as far as we know, is Bray Wyatt like stuck his fingers into her mouth, and then like Braun Strowman attacked her, and somehow that was like enough to get her to turn. Like, you don't have to tell me exactly why somebody is turning. Of course, you want a little bit of mystery, but I think there needs to be some level of depth, some level of emotional connection. I've been a huge defender of the Cena and Wyatt Firefly Funhouse match, and I hate this. I can't say I like this at all, because this story does not convey any level of depth, whereas I think that match did in a very short amount of time. Told you a whole lot more about like the history behind the John Cena character. I really have not had any of that involving Nikki nor Alexa.
Yeah, and like just talking it out right now, Way, it's like, yeah, they've had opportunities to add a little bit more depth, to add some more layers to this relationship and to this story, and they haven't. So like, I hope that they'll do some of that, but the track record isn't great.
Again, it feels like we're nearing the finish line, or maybe even past the finish line right now, and like, you know, like stumbling out the gates, and like the whole time you've had a bit of a bad run. So I also felt like this match was almost like, to me, some of the worst parts of like WWE acting style that's been so popular lately. Like, there's been a lot of criticism about maybe WWE doing too much of that. Some of it praise, you know, especially with like Roman and Jey Uso being a prime example, where that match was almost all acting. But I think it was like the story was good enough. to hook most of this audience in.
That's the thing. Like it's built on a foundation, whereas with this, it's like flimsy at best underneath.
And so the result was just like pretty predictable and kind of cringy, like B-level, C-level horror movie acting here.
What's wrong with you, Wei Ting? What's wrong, Wei? Like yelling at you and banging your head on the mat. That's not getting through to you?
No. I mean, I think it needed a big soundtrack or something. Maybe some Metallica, Nate, because that's what we got here. Coming off of the that match, we got another recap of the Taker Metallica video.
Mm-hmm.
So that was about as much as we had for the mention of the Undertaker tonight. But our main event is Randy Orton versus AJ Styles. Orton quickly gets the advantage early on by countering AJ's acrobatics with a very simple thumb to the eye. AJ gets back on the offensive using Jordan's assistance on the outside. He even belly-to-back suplexes Orton onto the announce table, hitting him with his own spot. Orton goes up top for a superplex, but AJ escapes, hits the chop block, and starts working over Orton's leg. Orton avoids a calf crusher and regains control. He hits a backbreaker, but damages his knee in the process. AJ again locks in the calf crusher, but Orton struggles before AJ firmly locks it in. Very good selling from Orton, I thought, throughout the match. They spill to the floor as Orton rests on the barricade. The Fiend, not Akira Tozawa this time, briefly appears. Randy Orton avoids a phenomenal forearm and then hits a draping DDT. Then he sets up for the RKO, but again the lights go out. The Fiend shows up again. As Orton is disoriented, AJ hits the phenomenal forearm for the win to take up the final position in next week's triple threat match. Thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I thought the match was solid. I think, we could quibble with some of the finishes from the matches we've seen in the tournament tonight, but like this match included, I thought the right guy went over. Like I'm really looking forward to AJ, Riddle, and Keith Lee. Like it almost feels like a throwback TNA match where you've got two guys that can fly and do the technical stuff, and you got a big muscle base.
Mm-hmm.
It's like AJ Daniels and Abyss. Like it brings to mind something like that. But this match specifically, I think it's interesting. Like they didn't diminish my interest is what I'm trying to say in either feud, whether it's AJ going for the title or the Fiend and Randy. So I guess mission accomplished. So yeah, like I think Randy is at this point in his career. I know if you listened to the show last night, they weren't the kindest words out there for Randall. But I think at this point in his career, Randy's a guy that you know what you're going to get. And when you put him in there with a guy like AJ, it's going to be solid at least.
I like the match. I thought they told a good story with Randy's leg. I liked Orton selling a lot here. Your enjoyment, I think, of the match might depend on how accepting you are of some of the shenanigans with the Fiend here at the end. I mean, the Fiend, it's like it's all gimmick, right? So his distraction finishes are going to be what they're going to be. I do wish like maybe they can be a little bit more like varied with the way he interrupts the matches now, rather than just lights out, peekaboo.
It's branding.
Branding.
It's branding. He's got a style way. He's got to stick to the brand.
Well, I guess Retribution is no longer around. They weren't on the show at all, so he's the only guy using it. But what did you think of Raw overall?
I forgot because I usually watch Raw. Like I'll tune in and out on Mondays, and I'll watch Monday Night Football, or I'll watch Rachel Maddow, or I'll watch something else, and flip back and forth. This is the first time in a long time that I've sat down to watch Raw. It's a long watch.
Oh yeah.
It's a long show. Like I wouldn't be surprised if some folks out there were watching and fell asleep towards the end of the show.
Right before the main event, maybe.
Right before the main event, maybe. It wouldn't surprise me. I think this show could have been pretty good, but there were some things that really pissed me off, particularly the way the Hurt business was portrayed in terms of some of the decision-making. I thought some of the finishes of the match were screwy. Lana, being this babyface we focus on in the women's division, is not doing anything for me. The Bray, Alexa, Nikki stuff is kind of hit and miss. So, like, overall, it was it wasn't the worst show I've seen, which I guess is damning with faint praise way. But it wasn't a great show, especially not coming off of a Survivor Series that I thought was actually pretty solid.
I never really noticed it, but Survivor Series last night was what, 3:30 in runtime. Yeah. But yet for some reason, that show feels far quicker than the 3 hours of Raw that we get, and I think that's mainly due to how important the content might be that you're watching for those 3 hours. The show we got last night was fitting of a 3.5 hour show.
Yeah.
The content we typically get on an edition of Raw is fitting of perhaps a 1.5 hour show. And that it definitely makes these often a drag. And I really felt it this week too. But
the pacing's off too. If you want to give me a 40-minute or 30-minute, however long it was, New Day Hurt Business match, just do it. You don't need the shenanigans in the middle. Because I thought if you had told me going into the Nightway that we're going to get a 30-minute match with the New Day and the Hurt Business, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm here for it. But the way they executed it just wasn't good.
I really enjoyed the mini tournament that they had throughout the show, leading into next week's 3-way. I thought all 3 pairings were really good, at least in ring, maybe finishes aside. All 3 pairings were really good. And in particular, I would actually really highly recommend Sheamus versus Matt Riddle from tonight for people to go out of their way to watch. It also built well for next week's 3-way, which I'm also looking forward to a lot. But some of the booking on this match, man, I don't know what happened with that New Day Hurt Business thing, as you mentioned. And a lot of I would say non-committal finishes in Lashley and Lee and AJ and Orton. But at this point, it's almost to be expected for WWE. So, good concept, maybe not fully delivering an execution. So we shall see what the forum thought here. Forum.postwrestling.com. Out of 10, Nate, what would you rate this show?
Oof, I know 6 out of 10 is my brand way, but I can't give it that high. I can't go that high tonight. I'd probably give this show maybe a 4.5 out of 10.
Let's see what the forum thought. 5.6 out of 10. Paul from New Jersey says, when Riddle talks, Paul from New Jersey becomes sad. That being said, he and Sheamus had a hell of a match. Hard pass on the pizza-flavored yogurt. I've been thoroughly enjoying the Lana stuff. Thought we might see Peyton Royce on the show after pitting Bayley, but once again, my hopes are dashed. Raw started out... That's true, too. They put Peyton over, I would say, pretty well by giving her a pin over Bayley, but nothing from her. Raw started out very promising, but took a bit of a nosedive as it went on for me. 5 WrestleMania caliber matches that already happened at WrestleMania out of 10. So is Tucker completely forgotten about? Yes. He's probably on main event this week. Do you want me to take this one, Nate? Or do you want to read it?
You can go ahead and take it away.
All right. It's just one last piece of feedback here from Andrew from Cape Breton.
And I was going to say, I didn't want to make mention of it, Wade, but the fact that, we got 2 pieces of feedback, it tells you about this show.
I think so, too. We got Andrew from Cape Breton who says, the stuff with Lana bugs me. I watched her WWE Chronicle episode, and in parts it's heartbreaking, but also frustrating. Lana clearly is not cut out for being an in-ring worker as seen in her slow-motion running in offense, but she has so many other positive aspects about her that WWE just doesn't want to use. It feels like they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with her. What's worse is it seems like she's a sympathetic babyface despite being someone who fails upwards. She comes across as entitled, and it makes me want to hate her and watch her get beat up by Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. I like the Riddle and Sheamus match, but MVP looked at Riddle like everybody looks at Riddle, with pure disdain and annoyance. Why do all the heels feel like baby faces? I relate more to the heels. Maybe I'm just getting cynical. It's kind of true, what Andrew mentioned. So, Lana is getting the James Ellsworth push.
Yes. It's like the Peter principle. You just fail upwards, and you'll get promoted to the level of your incompetence. And when you were reading that feedback way, and then it's terrible because yes, I need to look at that Chronicle because I have heard good things about it, and it does sound like she's been through some stuff in her real life. But all I could think about when Andrew was leaving us feedback is, oh my goodness, Lana's gimmick is white privilege. Like, I haven't done anything to earn my spot. I haven't done the hard work required and necessary. Like, I get it just by virtue of being a pretty blonde lady.
And who were the final two people to eliminate themselves last night, Nate?
Two women of color, Ting. This is a metaphor. It's not a match.
Oh my goodness. Oh boy. Well, that makes me give a whole new appreciation to this storyline. There's perhaps a whole lot more depth at play than maybe we're giving it credit for. Very interesting takes, as always, from you, Nate. A pleasure as always. Thank you for joining me for a bit of a longer show, but still, I think within our time limit. But again, Nate, where can people hear from you, not just for your wrestling takes, but for all of your takes on everything going on?
Yes, well, this was a pleasure, Way. Always good chatting with you, my friend, and it was good that we had our ace reporter early in the show, Brother Andrew Thompson, so that was a good conversation. But if folks want to hear more from me, they can check me out primarily on the Kings of Sport. You can check us out. We've got a Patreon, patreon.com/the Kings of Sport. $5 gets you in the door. If you want to pay more, I won't stop you. We got over 100 hours of audio and video for the folks out there, wrestling, politics, sports, MCU stuff. You know, there's a bunch of stuff on there, so you can check that out. Coming up this week, as a matter of fact, we are dropping our very first movie live watch, where Brittany Monet, Vanessa Shark, two of my co-hosts from the Black Lightning podcast, they sat down with me and we did a live watch of Hamilton on Disney+.
Wow.
So that'll be out on Thursday as a Thanksgiving treat for the folks in America and a Thursday treat for the folks in Canada. So that's there.
How many times have you seen it?
Hamilton, I've seen Hamilton probably 7 times now. Since July.
Impressive. So I'm expecting some deep dive commentary from Nate.
Oh yeah, it's great because like Brittany is like a super Hamilton fan. She's seen the show live. I'm kind of like the new convert to the church, and Vanessa is our friend who we pestered into watching this film with us. And so you get 3 different points of view on the movie. So that'll be up on the Patreon this week. You can also check me out on Place to Be Nation with the main event, and of course, Post Wrestling, the Rocky Maivia Picture Show. The latest edition, as Wayne mentioned off the top, is myself, Shane McDonough, and Chris from LA, and we reviewed San Andreas. And I don't know if this is breaking news or not, Wayne, but that will be the final review from the Rocky Maivia Picture Show for 2020.
I believe you mentioned it on the show, did you not?
Yes, because like the election and San Andreas took so much out of us. So December we're taking the month off, and then we'll be back in January. So January 2021, and it feels really good to say those numbers, Ting. 2021, the first Rocky Maivia Picture Show of the year will be myself and the guys from Too Fast, Too Forever, and maybe some other special guests, and we'll be reviewing Fast and Furious 7.
Oh, what a great way to come back from the man who, again, the Nas of podcasting himself, Nate Milton. And again, if you want to support the Rocky Maivia Picture Show, grab a T-shirt this week, store.postwrestling.com. We've got a 20% off sale. And again, perhaps one of my favorites, a design from Robert Pearson for the Rocky Maivia Picture Show. Go and check that out.
What better thing to do? I don't want to say it, Way, but I feel like we've already walked down this path talking about Lana's gimmick. But what better way to support one of your favorite black podcasters than to buy his T-shirt on Black Friday, ladies and gentlemen?
Whoa, unbelievable! All the connections are right there, and he's the man to draw it all together. So. Thank you very much, Nate Milton. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. I will be back tomorrow on the cafe with John Pollock to talk about ECW Anarchy rules, and then Wednesday with Bruce Lord on Rewind at Dynamite, along with Andrew Thompson as well. So you have the final word, Nate.
How else can we end this week's show, Way, other than
Broger?